Alright mates, how's it going? In today's video, it's chapter 2 of The Last Guardian by Jeff Grubb. It's a very long chapter with a lot of dialogue, and it's probably going to feel a little bit like you're stuck in a college lecture, but whatevs. Let's go! Khadgar knew full well his eyes were wide and his face was pale, but there wasn't much he could do about it. Are you ill? Rose? Is he ill? Winded perhaps? It was a long climb up. Finally, Khadgar managed to gather his senses, at least enough to say, "Why'd you burn the letter? You didn't even read it." "Sir." The Master Mage then chuckled. "O great and respected Magus Medivh, Master Mage of Karazhan, I bring you the greetings of the Kirin Tor, most learned and pure sant of the magical academies, guilds and societies, advisors to kings, teachers of the learned, revealers of secrets. They continue along those lines, blowing smoke up their asses for quite a while. How am I doing so far? Couldn't say. I was instructed not to open the letter. But you did anyway." Khadgar slowly nodded, steeling himself for the response. "When?" "On the voyage from Lordaeron to Kultiris. There was no wind, so we were stuck for 2 days, and curiosity got the better of you." Medivh then smiled. "I probably would have opened it the moment I was out of sight of the Violet Citadel, personally. I considered that, but I figured they probably had some divination spells in operation, at least at that range. And you wanted to be far from any spells or message recalling you for opening the letter. And you patched it back together well enough to fool a cursory examination. Tell me, how did I do that?" "Do what, sir?" "Know what was in the letter. The letter I just burned says that I will find the young man Khadgar impressive in his seduction and intelligence. So, impress me." "You read my mind?" "Possible, but incorrect. You're a stew of nerves right now. That gets in the way of mind reading. One wrong. You've gotten this sort of letter before? From the Kirin Tor? You know how they write? Also possible. I have received such letters before, and they do indeed tend to be overweening in their self-congratulatory tone. But you know the exact wording as well as I do. A good try, albeit the most obvious, but also incorrect. 2 wrong." Khadgar's mind was now racing, whilst his heart thundered in his chest. "Sympathy. Explain. What are the magical laws? When someone handles an item, they leave a part of their own magical aura attached to it. Auras vary with individuals. It's possible to connect to one by affecting the other. In this way, a lock of hair may be used in a love charm, or a coin tracked back to its original owner." Medivh's face remained unreadable. "Continue." "The more someone uses an item, the stronger the resonance. So therefore, an item that receives a lot of handling or attention will have a stronger sympathy. A document that someone has written has more aura to it than a blank piece of parchment, and the person is concentrating on what they are writing, so you were mind reading, just not my mind. You were reading the mind of the scribe who wrote the letter at the time he was writing it." "You're not bad. Not bad at all. You know your counter spells?" "To the 5th roster. Can you power a mystic bolt?" "1 or 2, but it's draining." "Your primary elementals?" "Strongest in flame, but I know them all." "Nature magic? Ripening, culling, harvesting? Can you take a seed and pull the youth from it until it becomes a flower?" "No, sir. I was trained in a city." "Can you make a homunculus?" "I understand the principle, but doctrine frowns on it." "You sailed here from Lordaeron. What type of boat was it?" A Terrassian windrunner." "Human crew?" "Yeah." "Did you speak with them at all?" "A little. I think they found my accent funny." "Yes, they are easily amused." "Any non-humans in the crew?" "No, sir. The Terrassians did tell stories of fishmen. Murlocs, I think they called them." "Are they real?" "They are." "What other races have you encountered, other than variations of humans?" "Some gnomes were at Dalaran once, and I've met dwarven artificers at the Violet Citadel." "What about trolls or goblins?" There are 4 known varieties of trolls. There may be a 5th. That would be the bullshit Alonda teaches. Trolls are savage, larger than humans. Tribal, almost completely removed from civilized lands, almost extinct in Lordaeron. Goblins? Smaller, sort of dwarf size, just as inventive but in a destructive fashion. Fearless. I've read that there's a race they're insane. Only the smart ones. You know about demons? Of course, sir. From the legends. All mages of Dalaran are taught the proper abjurations and protections from day one, but you've never summoned one, or been present for a summon. No, sir. I wouldn't even think of it. I do not doubt that you wouldn't. Do you know what a guardian is? A guardian? Like a parent? Don't worry. You're not supposed to know. It's part of the trick. So, what do you know about me? Khadgar shot a glance towards Morose, only to realise the bold weasel had buggered off at some point. Didn't even notice him leave. The young man then stammered for a moment. The mages of the Kirin Tor hold you in high regards. Obviously. You're a powerful independent mage, supposedly an advisor to King Lane. We go back. Beyond that, yes, nothing specific to justify the high esteem. It's supposed to be that way. But all of that aside, what do you know about me? Nothing, sir. Nothing? You came all this way for nothing? Did you even bother to check? Perhaps I was just an excuse for your masters to get you out of their hair, hoping you'd die en route. Wouldn't be the first time someone's tried that. There wasn't much to check. You haven't done that much. I mean, not much that I could find out, sir. But what did you find out? You come from a spellcaster heritage. Your father was a mage, one Nihilus Aaron. Your mother was Aegwyn, which may be a title as opposed to a name, one that goes back at least 800 years. You know King Lane and Lord Lothar from your childhood, but beyond that, nothing. Oh, and your name means Keeper of Secrets in High Elven. I found that out as well. All too true. Aegwyn is not a title, by the way. It is merely my mother's name. Then there were several Aegwyns. Probably a family name. Only one. But that would make her over 750 years old when I was born. She's much older than that. I was a late child in her life, which may be one reason the Kirin Tor is so interested in what I keep in my library, which is why they sent you. Sir, to be honest, every mage save the highest in the Kirin Tor wants me to find out something from you, and I will accommodate them as best I am able. But if there is material that you wish to keep restricted or hidden, I will fully understand. If I thought that, you wouldn't have even made it through the forest to reach here. I need someone to sort and organise the library, and after that, the alchemical laboratories. I think you'll do nicely. You see, I know the meaning of your name just as you know mine. Morose? Khadgar jumped as the bold weasel suddenly manifested out of nowhere. Take the lad down to his quarters and make sure he eats something. It's been a long day for him. One question, Master. Lord Magus, sir. Call me Medivh, for now. What is the meaning of my name? You don't speak Dwarven? No. My name means Keeper of Secrets in High Elven. Your name means trust in the old Dwarven language. So I will hold you to your name, young Khadgar. Young Trust. Morose escorted Khadgar to his quarters, explaining a few things on the way down. Things like most of the meals in the tower were simple fare, porridge and sausage for breakfast, a cold lunch, and a large hearty dinner, which was usually stew or a roast or something. Cook would retire after evening meals, but there were always leftovers in the kitchen. Medivh kept hours that could be charitably described as erratic. And finally, you're an assistant rather than a servant, but you'll still be expected to be available to help the Master Mage whenever he deems necessary. I'd expect that, as an apprentice. Not an apprentice yet, lad. Not by Arf. But Medivh said you could sort out the library. That's assistants' work, not apprentices. Others have been assistants. None became apprentices. Khadgar's brow furrowed. He'd not expected there to be a level before apprentice in the mage's hierarchy. How long before? I don't know. None have ever made it that far. Well, how many other assistants have there been? Morose then looked off to the distance, and Khadgar couldn't tell whether he was deep in thought or if his mind had just wandered off. Dozens. At least. An elfling? No, 2 elflings. You're the first from the Kirin Tor. Dozens? Oh. How long did they last? Days. Sometimes hours. One elf didn't even make it up the stairs. 'Cause he didn't have blinders. Anyway, Bog's at the end of the hall. Tidy yourself up, then come down to the kitchen. Cook will have something warm for you. Khadgar entered his room and saw that it was a pretty modest dwelling. A bed, a desk, a closet. He quickly threw his rucksack in said closet and walked over to the window. The room was still situated high up the tower, so the view was quite extensive. From this height, Khadgar could see that this land had once been a crater, worn and weathered by the passage of time. and Khadgar wondered whether Medivh's mother had been here when the land rose, or sank, or been struck by a piece of the sky. 800 years. Bloody hell. Even by wizard standards, that was a long time. Most human wizards were looking pretty frail by 200 years old, but to be 750 and bear a child? Pfft, Medivh must have been having him on. Preposterous. Khadgar then left his room and visited the facilities at the end of the hall. Once again, pretty Spartan. A basin, a mirror, and a toilet. What more do you need? So Khadgar washed his face a bit, took a dump, and now it was time to make his way to the kitchen. But there was a slight problem. He had no idea where the kitchen actually was. He'd seen some stables on the ground floor, and they'd passed a banquet hall on the way up. Kitchen is likely going to be somewhere near the banquet hall, he thought. So he found a staircase and started making his way down. Soon enough, he found the banquet hall. But now he found himself faced with multiple exits. The first one he chose ended up in a dead-end hallway. The second choice, exactly the same. But the third led to something completely different and unexpected. The ceiling above him opened up suddenly to reveal a sky the colour of blood, and a whole bunch of men in armour, armed for battle, appeared around him. The men were shouting and pointing, but their voices seemed indistinct and muddied, as if underwater. Was this a dream? Khadgar thought. Had he passed out from exhaustion without realising it? No. He could feel the heat of the sun, and the breeze in the air. This felt too real to be a dream. Khadgar then examined his surroundings. These soldiers were atop a small hill, with makeshift battlements crafted from whatever they could find. This was no castle or fort. They'd chosen this spot to fight only because there was no other available to them. This was somewhat of a last stand. The soldiers then parted, revealing their apparent leader. His gear seemed more like a scholar's robes than a soldier's armour, and he then started bellowing orders with a voice that sounded like the raging sea itself. The warriors seemed to understand what he was saying, though, because they all sprang into action, forming up neatly along the barricades. The commander then brushed past Khadgar, and the young man stumbled backwards. And despite the fact that the rest of the soldiers had not seemed to notice Khadgar's presence, this commander bloke did. The commander's eyes looked deeply into Khadgar's eyes, and Khadgar gasped at what he saw. The commander then simply nodded at him, and then he was off, bellowing more orders to the soldiers. The warriors themselves then started to yell and shout and point off at the distance, and as Khadgar turned to look at what they were pointing at, he saw a wave of green and black advancing towards them. An army of monsters, and Khadgar decided now was probably a good time to cheese it. So he turned and ran, and almost slammed right into Morose. You were late. You get lost. Oh, I saw... misplaced. Khadgar looked at Morose and nodded mutely. Late supper is ready. Don't get misplaced again. The bold weasel then turned and walked off, leaving Khadgar alone. And he was very much alone now. Any evidence of the vision he'd just witnessed was nowhere to be seen. No soldiers, no green monsters, only a memory that scared Khadgar to his core. But it wasn't the bloodshed or the monsters that terrified Khadgar. 'Twas the mage warrior commander. His face was aged, his hair greyed, but his eyes, they were unmistakable. They were Khadgar's eyes. He recognised them from many a time looking in mirrors and stuff. And it was at this moment that Khadgar thought, I really need to get myself a pair of blinders. And we're leaving it there! Told you it was a long chapter. Do you know how many words I just said? It was 1,000,000 words. No, it was 2,665 words. Precisely. I counted each one. As usual, links in the description for the book, my Patreon page, my Discord, all of that stuff. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, all of that bollocks. And all that's left to say is, thanks for watching, and see ya!